like God is like nowhere almost. Like he is everywhere. He's God. He's everywhere. But I feel like we're pushing him out of all the places he is. Like we pushed him out of our schools. So like he's no longer in schools. They're pushing to get the little thing in God we trust off the money. So we're pushing him out of our government. And now I feel like we're pushing him out of our churches. Get the little thing in God we trust off the money. Like, I don't understand how a preacher can stand on his stage, on his pulpit, and look at the congregation where he once had 1,000, and then a big blowout thing happens, and then every week numbers dwindle. How he can look at that and say, yeah, what I'm doing is right. You know, it does say that those who hear the truth, they're going to despise it. So, I mean, I guess maybe they're taking it as I must be preaching right. But when you walk into a church and you can't feel the presence of God, it's really disheartening. And what's even is when members of that congregation come together and voice how they don't feel God is there, how they feel the leadership has lost its way, how they feel like the church is just wrong. They sit together, they get heated in a conversation, and then they leave, and that's it. Nothing comes of it. And then the next time they see each other, they get on about their conversation, how the church is still the same. Well, you know why it's still the same? It's because you're not standing up and doing anything about it. Doesn't do anything. And then when I go somewhere with you, we're off by ourselves, and you say, you know what? I'm so glad you said that. I'm glad finally someone's sticking up for what's supposed to be right. I'm glad. You know what? I wish I could look at you and say, I'm glad you stuck up with me too. But I can't say that. And it sickens me when you come up to me and you tell me this. I don't want to know how glad you are that I'm doing something. I want to know how glad you are that God worked in your heart and He told you to stand up, and how God gave you the words you need to know, and you said something to the people who are doing something wrong. And I want to know how glad you are that when they looked at you and they spurned you, when they wanted nothing to do with you and they scoffed at you, I want to know how glad you are that it's okay because you did what God wanted you to do. You saw people not doing God's work and pretending to be a child of God, and you went up to them and you stood up for what was right and you said something. Peter 3:14 says that even though we suffer for righteous reasons, we are blessed. That means that when you're telling people the word of God and they persecute you for it, even our own Christian brothers and sisters, that means you're blessed. Do you understand what that means? That means even if you're alone in the church, alone, nobody wants you, God will still want you. Because you're standing up for Him. You're bringing Him glory when you put aside your fear of man and you step up to man and you tell man who God is. That is what glorifies God. Not when you sit behind leaders' backs in houses and you complain about what's wrong. And you know what? I get it. It's scary. It is scary to stand up in the middle of a sermon and look at your pastor and tell him he's wrong. It's scary because you will be standing alone when you do it. But that doesn't mean you're always going to be alone. If you stand up for what's right, other people who feel the same will step up with you. And I understand. I have choked a few times too. I do get scared. I get nervous. Like, I don't think you guys get it. But every time I stand up to any of you or to anybody else and I tell them, you can't make jokes like that because the word says this, or I won't watch Family Guy because it's the opposite of God, that stuff, it scares me. It frightens me, especially when it's family, when it's your friends, because you don't want to insult them. But the fact is, I don't care about your ego, and I don't care about your feelings. I care about where your heart with God is. That's more important to me. So my fear of how you'll react, of what you'll think of me, the fear of you not wanting to be my friend anymore is diminished because I know that if your heart's not after God, then it doesn't matter anyway what you think of me. And if you don't want to be my friend because I show you where your heart is, that's willing to risk. It sickens me how I can walk into a church and I can see all the chaos that's going on, and I can voice this, and people can raise their hand and say, I do too. What are you going to do about it? When did I become the only person that can fix it? When did I become a superhero? Because last time I checked, I'm just like you. So what makes me more special that I'm the one that has to stand up and say something? Why do you rely only on me standing up? Because one day I'm either not going to be there or I'm going to have a moment of weakness and I'm going to fall too.